which we spoke about in depth last week, and it was a dramatic first couple of chaotic, I think we described it, the first couple of days. But also the palace were weary and wary. They made that be known, that they were weary and wary about the circus. The king's patience snapped over the farce with Buckingham Palace. So what changed?
King Charles has barely had time to absorb the latest royal treasure scandal when the situation at Highgrove reportedly takes a turn that leaves the palace scrambling for answers. Camilla is inside the Gloucestershire estate. Security officers are at the gates. Her movements are suddenly restricted, and according to the explosive account surrounding this developing royal controversy, the person pushing hardest for action is not some palace official or outside investigator. It is William. What William allegedly discovered in the royal records was disturbing enough to force the issue into the open. Valuable historic treasures connected to the crown appeared to have vanished from the paper trail, while other objects were allegedly substituted, moved, or recorded under circumstances that raised serious questions. But that was only the beginning, because when investigators followed the trail beyond the palace inventory, they reportedly found something far more troubling: money, foreign contacts, administrative records, and names connected to Camilla's wider household circle. The question now hanging over Highgrove is brutal. The iron gates at Highgrove were already closing when the first security vehicles arrived. It was still early, the grounds wet from the night, when movement around the Gloucestershire estate suddenly changed. Staff who normally crossed the property without hesitation were being stopped and questioned. Doors that were usually left open were being secured, communications were being restricted, and inside the residence, Camilla was reportedly being told that the situation was no longer under ordinary household control.
And it was nothing, but he then wrote a book.
He did.
Yeah.
And he criticised me for writing mine, and then he wrote his. Here we go. And now, recently, he said, well, he doesn't have any shame at all. And he's quite comfortable with his own self.
According to the fictionalized scenario developed for this story, the order followed an explosive discovery involving disputed royal treasures and records allegedly connected to people within Camilla's wider administrative circle. The claim is not established fact, and no verified evidence shows that William imprisoned Camilla at Highgrove. But within this story, the consequences are immediate. William has pushed the investigation forward, and the palace is treating the alleged treasure scandal as something far more dangerous than an embarrassing family dispute. The first warning came from the records. An inventory entry did not match the object it was supposed to describe. Then another discrepancy appeared. A valuable historic piece was supposedly still accounted for, yet the documentation surrounding its location had changed. The difference was small enough to escape casual attention, but serious enough to make investigators stop and look again. Someone had altered a trail that should have been routine, and once that trail was examined closely, it began pointing toward a much larger network. Hi viewers, if you have been waiting for someone to finally stand up and demand answers from Camilla and the people protecting her, then this is your moment. William has reportedly taken action, but the question is whether ordinary people are going to stand silently and watch the story disappear behind palace doors. If you believe the truth deserves to come out, hit like, share this with someone who has had enough of the royal drama, and subscribe. Do not just watch William take a stand. Take your own stand right here. William's concern, according to the story, was not simply that an object might have disappeared. The deeper problem was the possibility that somebody had learned how the royal household recorded, protected, transferred, and accounted for valuable property. If that was true, the missing treasure was only the visible part of the problem. The first investigators reportedly began comparing old inventories against newer administrative records. Dates were placed beside transfer documents. Names were matched against access logs. Routine maintenance entries were examined again. The pattern slowly became harder to dismiss as clerical error. One disputed item had apparently moved through paperwork without the kind of scrutiny normally expected for something of its historical value. Then came the detail that changed the temperature inside Highgrove. A record associated with the transfer allegedly carried an administrative connection to Camilla's wider household circle.
Him, then it would have looked very bad, I think. So I think it needed to come from, when it did, it was announced, it was done on a WhatsApp from Toby and Andre. About
Shock horror, everyone. There was WhatsApp groups. I know people get
he's
very
added another
triggered
one.
by WhatsApp groups.
6:42, but the information came through at 6:42, and that was it. That they're there, you know, and that they've been and seen it. And I thought Highgrove was a good choice. It's a private residence, even though.
That did not prove Camilla herself had ordered anything. It did not establish that she knew about any wrongdoing, but it created the kind of connection that could not simply be ignored. The investigation now had a name, a location, and a reason to look deeper, and William was reportedly no longer willing to wait for palace officials to settle the matter quietly. The story's most dramatic claim is that restrictions were imposed at Highgrove while the evidence was secured. Again, this is a fictionalized narrative device, not a verified account of a real imprisonment. Yet within the story, the symbolism is unmistakable. The residence associated with privacy and royal comfort has suddenly become the center of an investigation. Camilla's normal circle begins to disappear. A staff member is questioned. Another is asked to surrender access credentials. Household communications are examined. The atmosphere changes from routine royal administration to controlled uncertainty. Then investigators find something even more troubling. A phone linked to one member of the estate's administrative network allegedly contains communications with an overseas contact shortly before the security operation began. The timing is suspicious. The contact is not immediately explained. And the location attached to the number raises a new question about money moving beyond Britain. Switzerland. That single connection turns the inquiry in a new direction. If the treasure had simply been misplaced, there would be no obvious reason for an overseas financial trail. If a member of staff had made an innocent administrative mistake, there would be no reason for foreign intermediaries to appear in the records. And if Camilla had nothing to do with it, investigators now had to determine whether someone close to her had been using her household as cover. Inside Highgrove, the pressure continues building. The disputed records are no longer being treated as isolated mistakes. They are being compared against financial documents, delivery records, and historical inventories. Every document produces another question. Every answer seems to expose another gap. Then a second object enters the investigation. Its official record says one thing. The physical evidence suggests another. That is when the possibility of substitution enters the case. The idea is chilling because a missing treasure can trigger an investigation. A replacement treasure can hide one. A person searching for an absent object knows something is wrong immediately. A person looking at an object that appears to be exactly where it should be may never think to question whether it is the original. That possibility forces William's investigation into much darker territory. Because if the story's allegations are correct, someone may not have needed to steal royal treasures openly. They may have needed only enough access to remove originals, replace them, alter the records, and allow everyone else to believe nothing had changed. And that would mean the real target was not one piece of royal property. It was the system protecting all of it. The pressure on Camilla intensifies when investigators allegedly discover that the administrative trail does not stop at one staff member. Several people appear to have touched different parts of the process. One handled records, another had access to deliveries, another dealt with financial paperwork. None appears to hold the entire picture. That is precisely what makes the alleged scheme so difficult to understand. A single thief leaves a trail. A network can leave fragments, and fragments are much harder to recognize until someone finally places them beside one another. William's position becomes increasingly difficult. If he acts too slowly, valuable evidence could disappear. If he acts too aggressively, he risks turning an unproven allegation into a royal catastrophe. But then another document reportedly reaches him. It contains a date. That date corresponds with the disappearance of another disputed object, and beside the date is an administrative reference connected to the same circle already under scrutiny. For the first time, the investigation appears to have something more substantial than coincidence. William now has to confront the possibility that the treasure scandal did not begin with a random loss. It may have begun with deliberate access. And if someone inside the royal system was deliberately creating gaps in the records, then the question hanging over Highgrove was no longer simply what happened to the treasures. It was who had been given enough trust to make them disappear in the first place. Outside, security remained tight. Inside, the atmosphere grew colder, and somewhere within the paperwork surrounding the disputed royal property was a name that investigators had not expected to find, a name that could change the entire direction of the case, because the deeper William looked, the less certain it became that Camilla was the person controlling the scandal. She might have been closer to it than anyone wanted to admit, or she might have been exactly where someone wanted the investigators to look. The ledger that sat on the table at Highgrove did not look like evidence of a crime. It was bound in dark red leather, its pages filled with neat, handwritten columns tracking royal property across 3 decades. But under the white lights of a temporary security room, the numbers were telling a story that made no sense. Investigators began going through the paperwork line by line. Historical artifact records, estate shipping manifests, maintenance logs, and financial transactions were laid out in long rows across the table.
I don't know what he's trying to do, but one of the things that he did say was that he has never thrown anyone under a bus.
Oh, please. That's not true.
Well, you in particular.
He threw me under the bus. He threw his father under the bus. He threw his brother under the bus. Catherine, and indeed, his granny.
Yeah.
Everybody.
William had ordered every single document associated with Highgrove's private inventories to be audited immediately. He was not looking for administrative mistakes, he was looking for a pattern. They found the first major clue in a series of routine maintenance schedules. The records showed that over the past 4 years, specific antique items had been marked for conservation. These were historic silver pieces, rare porcelain sets, and decorative ceremonial objects of significant historical value. According to the paperwork, the objects had been temporarily removed from their display cases, transferred to certified restoration specialists, and returned weeks later. On paper, the process looked entirely normal. Every entry had a timestamp, a recorded reason for maintenance, and a reference number matching approved estate management protocols. But when investigators cross-referenced the maintenance dates with the estate's physical security logs, the story fell apart. On 3 separate occasions, the security logs recorded no transport vehicles entering or leaving the grounds on the dates the treasures were allegedly sent out for repair. The paperwork said the items were on the road to London. The security gates said nothing had moved. The maintenance loophole was brilliant in its simplicity. Someone inside the estate administration understood the royal inventory system well enough to know that items marked as under restoration were exempted from routine spot audits. By creating fake maintenance records, that person could remove an object from official tracking for months at a time without raising a single red flag. When the audit team physically inspected the display cases, the objects appeared to be sitting exactly where they belonged. But when a specialist brought in by the investigation examined a set of 18th century decorative pieces under direct light, the truth became inescapable. The weight was slightly off. The minute details on the metalwork lacked the sharpness of the original craftsmanship. The treasures sitting on the shelves were high-grade replicas. The discovery sent a shockwave through the investigation. This was no longer a simple case of missing property or sloppy bookkeeping. The presence of exact physical duplicates meant that whoever took the originals had time, direct physical access, and enough financial backing to have convincing copies manufactured in advance. The original historic objects had been systematically replaced while everyone believed they were safely locked away. The paper trail soon expanded beyond the physical boundaries of Highgrove. Investigators began following the financial documentation connected to the fake restoration companies listed in the ledger. The money did not move in direct transfers. It flowed through a series of London intermediaries, discreet private antique dealers, and third-party logistics firms operating under nondescript commercial names. But despite the layers of administrative camouflage, one payment structure stood out. A payment of £75,000 had been routed from a private holding account through an intermediate firm operating out of Geneva. The date on the transaction matched the exact week a major royal asset had been marked as out for conservation. The scandal was not a collection of random thefts. It was a structured, highly organized operation that had been running quietly in the background for years, draining valuable historic assets from secure royal premises while keeping the physical displays looking entirely untouched. If you are watching this right now and you believe that position, title, or royal status should never protect anyone from a thorough criminal investigation, You need to share your thoughts in the comments right now. Do you believe the truth should be exposed, no matter who it hurts? Or should a family cover up the evidence to save face? Type expose or cover up in the comments right now, because your stance speaks volumes about your own morals. And if you have the courage to face the unfiltered reality of how power operates behind closed doors, hit the subscribe button right now. Walking away now means choosing to remain blind while the full truth is being uncovered. The emotional atmosphere inside Highgrove grew heavier with every passing hour. William was reportedly spending long periods reviewing the evidence files personally, refusing to allow palace advisors to handle the matter through ordinary diplomatic channels. For William, the issue went far beyond the financial value of the missing items. It was a direct breach of trust inside an institution he was born to protect. Camilla remained inside the estate, her daily access restricted, and her routine administrative network entirely dismantled by the security team. She reportedly expressed deep frustration over the lockdown, demanding to know why an internal estate audit was being handled like an urgent police operation. But the evidence was moving faster than palace politics could contain. Investigators realized that the selection of the treasures was not random. The network was not taking whatever was easiest to grab. They were selecting objects based on specific criteria: high private market value, strong demand among international collectors, weak inventory overlap between public registries and private royal holdings, and long periods between physical inspections. The operation required intricate knowledge of royal administrative blind spots. It required someone who knew which ledgers were checked annually and which ones were left untouched for years.
Do you think, I did wonder earlier in the week with all the drama that was going on with the palace back and forth, and then obviously with the briefing between the palace with Buckingham Palace, whether they were going to stay there or not. I did wonder whether this would all happen, particularly after Harry's statement on Tuesday, the one you mentioned earlier. There was so much drama early on in the week.
Then came the break that escalated the investigation from an estate audit into a major crisis. While tracking the shipping entries associated with the fake restoration firm, investigators discovered a paper trail leading to an off-site commercial storage facility located on the outskirts of London. The lease for the unit was held by a private supply company that had maintained contracts with royal estates for over a decade. When investigators obtained authorization to search the facility, they were expecting to find shipping records or accounting files. Instead, they found crates. Inside the climate-controlled storage room were several physical crates, carefully packed and marked with international transport codes. A preliminary inspection revealed additional historical items that had not yet been reported missing from official estate records. Along with the physical property, investigators recovered a secondary ledger containing handwritten notes, transfer schedules, and explicit instructions regarding which items were to be moved next. The operation was actively ongoing. The discovery in London proved that Highgrove was only one branch of a much wider network. The individuals involved were not just liquidating past inventory. They were preparing to move another round of historic assets out of the country before the end of the year. As night fell over Highgrove, the focus of the investigation turned entirely toward the names listed in the administrative transfer orders found inside the storage facility. Every document signed, every authorization granted, and every delivery schedule approved had passed through specific administrative hands before reaching the estate managers. William was presented with the updated inventory from the London search late that evening. The evidence showed that the network had relied on continuous internal sign-offs from individuals positioned inside the highest levels of household administration. The investigative team brought out the final document recovered from the storage unit's safe. It was a signed authorization form dated 6 months prior, explicitly granting the transport firm cleared access to secure royal storage zones without standard security screening. At the bottom of the document was an official administrative stamp tied directly to the central office managing Camilla's estate operations. Beside the stamp was a signature that made the lead investigator pause. The handwriting matched the administrative authorizations previously used to move assets through Highgrove. But right beneath the primary sign-off, partially obscured by an official estate seal, was a second set of initials that did not belong to anyone in Highgrove's local administration. The initialing belonged to an executive authority operating directly out of Central Palace administration, suggesting that the command chain responsible for the treasure network extended far higher than anyone in the room had dared to imagine. The administrative office at Highgrove was sealed with heavy plastic tape before sunrise. Security personnel moved through the corridors, clearing staff from the administrative wing and confiscating electronic devices, hard drives, and physical file folders. The focus had shifted from tracking physical crates to exposing the internal machinery that allowed historic assets to walk out the front door. Investigators stopped looking for forced locks or security breaches. The reality confronting the team was far more unsettling. The doors were opened with valid keycards. The transport vehicles were waved through gates by security guards who recognized the drivers. The transfers were executed in broad daylight because every person involved carried legitimate credentials. The supply chain was mapped out across a large board in the temporary operations center. Instead of late-night burglaries, the operation relied on ordinary routine. Approved delivery schedules were modified by a few minutes. Service entrances were left clear during specific shift changes. Trusted private contractors who had served royal estates for decades were given unrestricted access under the guise of routine structural inspections and conservation assessments. The mechanics of the operation depended entirely on familiarity. When a long-time contractor requested access to a secure storage room, nobody questioned the order because the paperwork carried the expected administrative seals. The system failed to protect the assets because the system was designed to trust the people holding power inside it. The investigation brought high-resolution archival photographs into the main display rooms to compare them directly against the items currently sitting on the pedestals. A specialist positioned a bright LED lamp inches away from a historical gold-trimmed urn. Under magnified lighting, the differences were subtle but decisive. The fine engraving along the base was slightly shallow. The weight distribution did not match the original 18th century foundry records. The object on display was a masterfully crafted replica designed to pass casual observation. The visual confirmation proved the depth of the deception. The replicas were not placed there to fool art experts forever. They were placed there to buy time, allowing years to pass before anyone noticed the original was gone. The displays remained occupied. The visitors walked past, and the estate logs remained green. Every administrative line, clearance form, and transport manifest connected to the operation began converging around a single administrative node. The paperwork consistently originated from or passed through the office managing Camilla's private household affairs. The paper trail was relentless. Office logs showed that staff within that administrative circle had authorized specific schedule modifications, approved vendor contracts, and issued security passes for the third-party logistics firms now under investigation. To anyone looking at the raw documentation, the conclusion appeared obvious. Then the lead investigator uncovered a critical discrepancy that disrupted the entire theory. While Camilla's administrative office was listed as the originating authority on dozens of clearance forms, her personal signature was absent from the actual authorization documents. In every instance, the final sign-off was executed using an institutional stamp or signed by proxy by senior administrative aides operating within her immediate orbit. The distinction created a profound narrative division. The paper trail proved that her household apparatus was used to facilitate the movement of the treasures, but it failed to prove that she personally ordered the operation. If you are listening to this right now, and you plan to scroll away without taking a stand, ask yourself why you are willing to look away when powerful systems protect their own. Do you truly believe that justice should depend on a person's title? Type justice in the comments right now if you demand full accountability, or scroll past if you prefer to let the powerful operate in silence without consequences. Subscribe to this channel immediately if you have the backbone to stay through to the end of this investigation, because turning your back now means accepting the lies you are fed. William refused to let the investigation be slowed down by diplomatic hesitation. He demanded the immediate revocation of security clearances for every administrator whose name appeared on the flagged documents, regardless of their standing or years of service. he instructed independent auditors to take full control of all estate ledgers and secure every physical archive across all royal properties. At Highgrove, the psychological toll of the lockdown became overwhelming. Camilla found herself effectively isolated inside her own residence. Her trusted personal assistants were removed from the grounds for questioning. Her phone lines were routed through secure monitoring systems, and her access to internal estate communications was completely cut off. According to insider accounts, she confronted senior security officers, demanding a direct meeting with William to address what she described as an outrageous overreach based on fabricated assumptions. She maintained that she had no knowledge of the transport operations and that her office credentials had been manipulated without her consent. Her isolation transformed the central question of the investigation. Was she the calculated mastermind orchestrating a multi-million-pound asset extraction from behind closed doors? Or was she an unsuspecting shield whose office was deliberately chosen to absorb the blame if the operation was ever exposed? The investigation reached a critical juncture when analysts decoded a series of encrypted messages recovered from a tablet seized during the raid on the London storage facility. The messages revealed direct coordination between an administrative officer tied to the Palace network and an outside art broker based in continental Europe. The communications detailed precise pickup times, valuation estimates, and instructions on how to bypass security protocols at Highgrove. Attached to the final message thread was a scanned document detailing a scheduled meeting at a private hotel in Mayfair. The meeting was arranged to finalize the transfer of 3 additional historical items. The document listed 2 attendees. One was a high-level executive within Camilla's administrative network. The second name was not a staff member, an art dealer, or a contractor. It was a senior legal representative serving the Central Crown Administration, a figure whose official duty was to protect the sovereign estate from institutional liability. The discovery proved that the network extended far beyond Highgrove's gates and deep into the legal foundation of the Loge doors. The oak doors of the central briefing room slammed shut as William tossed a thick leather binder onto the table before the assembled senior council. The room was instantly silent, the air heavy with shock as high-ranking palace officials, legal advisors, and security chiefs stared at the documents spread before them. There was no room left for polite diplomacy or quiet cover-ups. The evidence laid out across the long mahogany table was overwhelming. It consisted of multiple independent strands connecting seamlessly into a single web. Inventory irregularities spanning decades sat alongside flagged bank accounts, physical replica photographs, altered transport manifests, and intercepted foreign communications. A fierce ideological war erupted inside the palace walls. Older courtiers and senior legal advisors argued passionately for quiet containment, warning that exposing an insider asset network of this magnitude would shatter public trust in the monarchy forever. They advocated for discreet resignations, quiet transfers, and the silent recovery of missing items behind closed doors. William refused to entertain the idea of a cover-up. He insisted that protecting the integrity of the institution meant exposing the rot, regardless of who was brought down in the process. His stance was absolute. The law had to apply equally, even within the private residences of the royal family. At Highgrove, the consequences of William's stance were immediate and severe. Security forces enforced a total lockdown on the estate premises, restricting access to private quarters and stripping key staff of their administrative credentials. Camilla was formally notified that her administrative office was being placed under complete audit control. Outside investigators moved through her private workspaces, locking down filing cabinets, confiscating hard drives, and securing personal ledgers. Every communication leaving or entering the estate was logged and filtered. When confronted with the formal lockdown order, Camilla reportedly expressed outrage, demanding to know what definitive proof directly connected her to the missing treasures. The answer provided by the security director was cold and precise. The administrative paper trail surrounded her office, and until every document was verified, no one inside her circle was above suspicion. Yet just as the case against Camilla appeared airtight, a sudden discovery upended the narrative once again. while analyzing the digital metadata on the authorization files seized from the Mayfair hotel meeting, forensic technicians discovered that several crucial digital signatures had been applied remotely. The IP addresses used to attach administrative sign-offs to the shipment orders were traced back to external servers completely disconnected from Highgrove's local network. Someone had deliberately utilized administrative credentials linked to Camilla's office from an outside location. The paper trail had been constructed with surgical precision, designed so that if an audit ever occurred, investigators would naturally stop at Camilla's doorstep and look no further. If you are sitting there right now, watching this unravel and planning to stay silent, ask yourself what that says about your own values. Are you willing to ignore corruption just because it happens in high places? Type truth in the comments right now if you believe justice must be served no matter who is exposed, or walk away if you are content living with comfortable lies. Subscribe to this channel right now if you have the integrity to demand real answers, because abandoning this story now makes you complicit in letting the powerful hide behind their titles. William now found himself trapped in a dangerous moral dilemma. Proceeding too aggressively based on manipulated evidence risked destroying an innocent person's standing and shattering his own family. But hesitating or pulling back would give the real conspirators the time they needed to destroy remaining records and vanish into the shadows. He chose to press forward, ordering an immediate expansion of the investigation into external legal entities and historic estate management archives dating back generations. The breakthrough came late that night when auditors uncovered a hidden storage locker located in a vault beneath a London financial district firm. Inside, tucked away in an unmarked safe, was a ledger containing records that predated the recent treasure transfers by over 15 years. The document proved that the systematic removal of historic assets had not begun recently. The infrastructure had been established long before Camilla ever assumed her administrative role at Highgrove. The implication was terrifying. Someone inside the institutional apparatus had been siphoning off irreplaceable heritage pieces for over a decade, using changing political dynamics and family friction as a screen to conceal their tracks. The network was not merely stealing art. They were using the vulnerabilities of the royal family to build a hidden empire of influence, knowing precisely how the palace would react when the truth finally surfaced: the royal establishment itself. The heavy metal door of a subterranean vault in Zurich swung open, revealing rows of safety deposit boxes under strict guard. European financial investigators, acting on international warrants secured by William's legal team, stepped inside with white cotton gloves and digital scanning equipment. The search for the missing royal assets had reached its final, decisive battleground. Inside box 412, investigators pulled out a velvet-lined case containing detailed transaction records, offshore banking keys, and ownership deeds for private art galleries across 3 continents. The paper trail had finally crossed the English Channel, exposing a secondary financial layer that made the previous discoveries look small by comparison. The money generated from selling the stolen royal treasures had not been kept in standard cash accounts. It had been funneled through a maze of shell corporations, obscure trusts registered in overseas territories, and legitimate commercial real estate holdings. The objective was not simple personal enrichment. The network was accumulating vast political leverage, using the illicit wealth to secure influence over key institutional figures. Every time a historic artifact was moved out of Highgrove, a corresponding financial entry was created in a discrete Swiss ledger. The funds were then routed back into UK-based corporate entities that provided services directly to the Crown Estate, creating a closed loop of self-funding corruption. As the financial evidence solidified, William made his final move. He refused to allow palace officials to issue a muted corporate press release or sweep the findings under the rug. Instead, he ordered the complete, permanent removal of all compromised administrative personnel across every royal residence. At Highgrove, the physical restrictions remained active until every last piece of evidence was catalogued. Key administrative staff connected to the suspicious authorization orders were permanently removed from their positions and barred from entering royal properties. Disputed assets were secured in high-security locations under independent civilian guard, while financial accounts linked to the offshore shell companies were frozen by legal authorities. William formally requested independent judicial oversight for all royal inventory auditing moving forward, effectively ending centuries of unmonitored internal property management. The message was unmistakable. The age of unquestioned internal privilege was over, and the protection of the Crown's integrity took priority over personal relationships. Yet as the investigation reached its climax, the most disturbing revelation of all was finally laid bare. Forensic document examiners analyzing the original authorization orders discovered a set of hidden administrative logs buried inside the estate's primary server. The logs revealed that the paper trail incriminating Camilla had been created months before the first physical artifact ever left Highgrove. An insider network, operating from within the highest levels of Central Palace administration, had deliberately designed the administrative framework to automatically point toward Camilla's office if an audit occurred. They understood the internal hierarchy perfectly. They knew that if discrepancies were discovered, investigators would focus entirely on her household, leaving the real architects completely invisible in the background. The revelation transformed the entire tragedy. Camilla had not been the mastermind behind the stolen treasures. She had been selected as the ultimate scapegoat, positioned perfectly to absorb the blame and distract the royal family, while a deeply entrenched network stripped the institution of its heritage. The quiet grounds of Highgrove now stood as a stark reminder of how easily trust can be weaponized. The residence that once symbolized privacy and calm had become the backdrop for a scandal that nearly shattered the monarchy from within. The real danger had never been an outside intruder breaking through the front gates. The real threat had been the people already sitting inside the inner circle, holding legitimate authority and exploiting the blind trust of an ancient institution. If you are watching this right now and you choose to turn off your screen without taking a stand, ask yourself how easily you allow yourself to be misled by powerful narratives. Are you content to let corrupt figures manipulate the truth while innocent people take the fall? Type justice in the comments right now if you refuse to tolerate institutional deceit, or scroll past if you lack the courage to stand up for the truth. Subscribe to this channel right now and turn on notifications, because if you leave now, you are choosing to stay in the dark while the real masterminds walk free. This investigation is far from over. Just as the case at Highgrove appeared to settle, investigators searching the Zurich vault uncovered a locked ledger containing a single name that changes everything. That name belongs to a high-ranking public figure whose identity will rock the entire British establishment. In our next video, we unveil the secret bank records, the recorded phone calls, and the unbelievable moment William confronts the true mastermind face to face. You cannot afford to miss a single second of what comes next. The encrypted audio recording began playing inside the private study at Kensington Palace before the senior courtier could even sit down. The voice coming through the speaker was sharp, unhurried, and instantly recognizable to everyone standing in the room. It was the voice of a man who believed he was completely beyond the reach of auditors, security officers, or royal authority. In the recording, captured by European intelligence operatives monitoring the Swiss financial accounts, the figure explicitly outlined the final phase of the operation. He gave precise instructions on how to move 2 remaining Renaissance artifacts out of secure storage, transfer the proceeds into a private trust in Liechtenstein, and ensure that every piece of authorization paperwork carried the official stamp of Camilla's administrative office. William stood by the window, his back turned to the courtier, listening to every word in silence. The atmosphere inside the room was suffocating. There were no diplomatic pleasantries, no offer of tea, and no standard palace protocol. The time for polite denials had completely expired. The document retrieved from box 412 in Zurich sat open on the desk. Beside it lay a stack of verified wire transfers, property deeds, and recorded phone transcripts detailing a decade of systematic asset liquidations. The name written across the top of the master ledger was not a staff member, a third-party contractor, or a low-level clerk. It was the name of one of the most powerful administrative figures in the British establishment, A person who had spent 30 years controlling access, managing public relations, and advising the royal family on matters of legal and constitutional security. The confrontation that followed was ruthless in its precision. When the courtier attempted to frame the secret accounts as discretionary institutional funds set aside for emergency estate preservation, William presented the secondary evidence. The wire logs proved that millions of pounds had been funneled directly into private commercial holdings, luxury real estate acquisitions, and shell accounts registered in the Channel Islands. The scheme had never been about protecting the crown. It was a massive, cold, calculated extraction of cultural wealth, disguised as routine administrative management. The courtier had operated with absolute impunity for over 15 years because he understood the unspoken rule of the royal household. He knew that senior figures were terrified of public scandal, that accounting audits were historically superficial, and that whenever a discrepancy arose, the palace would instinctively look for a convenient internal scapegoat rather than risk pulling on a thread that could unravel the entire establishment. When questions first began surfacing around Highgrove, the network immediately activated its contingency plan. They intentionally placed falsified transfer forms, remote digital sign-offs, and administrative stamps directly inside Camilla's household records. They calculated that William's existing friction with Camilla would make him jump at the obvious trail, blinding him to the deeper institutional corruption operating right under his nose. Their calculation almost worked. If you are sitting there right now listening to this, and you still believe that powerful figures should be allowed to manipulate the truth behind closed doors, ask yourself why you keep tolerating the lies fed to the public. Are you really going to stay passive while those at the top play by a completely different set of rules? Type expose in the comments right now if you demand total transparency, or keep scrolling if you prefer to live in comfortable ignorance. Hit the subscribe button immediately and turn on notifications, because turning away now means choosing to protect the very people who betray your trust. As the confrontation inside Kensington Palace intensified, the courtier realized that his political leverage had vanished. The quiet threats of institutional embarrassment no longer carried any weight with William. The evidence gathered from the Zurich vault, combined with the intercepted audio files, created an airtight case that could not be buried by internal legal maneuvers or discreet resignations. Within hours of the meeting, security teams moved across multiple royal residences to execute a comprehensive purge of the administrative network. Key officials who had facilitated transport logistics, altered security gates logs, and managed the fake maintenance schedules were quietly escorted from their offices. Their access passes were revoked, their official email accounts terminated, and their private residences subjected to formal evidence searches. At Highgrove, the physical security restrictions were finally recalibrated. The heavy gates remained guarded, but the internal atmosphere underwent a dramatic shift. Camilla was formally notified of the findings uncovered in Zurich and Kensington. The administrative apparatus that had surrounded her with suspicion was dismantled, exposing the deliberate effort to frame her office for a crime designed far above her authority. Yet the emotional damage within the royal family remained profound. The investigation had exposed a chilling vulnerability at the core of the monarchy. It proved that despite all the security guards, armored vehicles, and centuries of tradition, the institution was remarkably easy to pillage from within if the person holding the keys possessed enough insider trust. The recovered artifacts were secured in high-security vaults in London, awaiting formal restoration and public accounting. Independent auditors took full control of every inventory registry across the sovereign estate, establishing an unyielding chain of custody that eliminated internal discretionary exemptions forever. William's refusal to compromise had prevented the complete looting of the royal heritage, but it had also forever altered the power dynamics inside the palace. The quiet arrangement where senior advisors operated without oversight was permanently shattered. The final piece of evidence recovered from the courtier's private safe, however, contained a discovery that extended far beyond missing art and forged paperwork. Tucked behind the financial ledgers was a confidential dossier detailing decades of recorded conversations, private family agreements, and sensitive medical files involving senior royals. The treasure network had not just been stealing physical property, they had been collecting strategic leverage against the entire royal family. ensuring that no matter who sat on the throne, the network would always hold the ultimate key to their silence. That discovery turned what began as an estate theft into a terrifying national security crisis. If you thought the Highgrove treasure scandal ended with the arrest of a rogue courtier, you are dead wrong. In our upcoming special report, we dive deep into the black file recovered from the courtier's London safe. We reveal the shocking audio tapes, the hidden surveillance footage, and the explosive secret that William uncovered about his own family heritage that the palace is desperately fighting to keep hidden from the world. You cannot afford to miss a single second of what is about to break. Hit subscribe right now and stay tuned.